This type doesn't just experience pain, they become the pain. They wear their suffering like a second skin. You'll recognize them by how every story ends in tragedy, how every compliment is deflected with self-pity, and how every joy you share is met with silence. Or worse, a new wave of sorrow from their life. They aren't faking it. They've simply learned, over time, that pain gives them attention. That weakness keeps people close. But what they don't see is how this slowly reshapes the people around them. Let's say you're excited about a small win. Maybe you finally took a day off to rest, or you completed a personal project. You share your joy, and they respond, "Must be nice. I wish I had time to enjoy life like you do." Suddenly, the light dims. You feel guilty for being happy. You hesitate next time. That's the silent power of the victim pattern. It doesn't attack you. It absorbs you. Jung warned that when someone constantly asks you to witness their despair, they're not just sharing their world. They're inviting you to live in it. And if you're not careful, you will start editing your emotions to match theirs. So let me ask you, have you ever stopped yourself from celebrating something because someone in your life always had it worse? Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I shouldn't be this happy, it might upset them"? If so, that's not empathy. That's emotional enmeshment. And over time, it can cost you your own joy. This one is harder to spot, because in the beginning, they seem like the perfect listener. They nod. They match your tone. They cry when you cry. Laugh when you laugh. It feels like you've found someone who gets you. But the truth is, you've found someone who copies you. Jung described this as an unstable ego boundary, a person who never fully developed their own emotional identity. So instead of relating from their truth, they mirror yours. Not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear that if they show who they really are, you might not stay. You begin to notice it in the small ways. You ask them how their day was, and they redirect it to yours. You try to comfort them, and somehow, you're the one being comforted. At first, it feels flattering, like a deep emotional connection. But eventually, it becomes disorienting. You start to wonder, do they actually know who I am? Or are they just showing me what I want to see? And when things get hard, when you need someone to hold you, to anchor you, they disappear. Because a mirror cannot carry weight. It can only reflect. Jung believed that we all need relationships that challenge us to stay grounded in our truth. But with an emotional mirror, you're always performing, always adapting. And in the end, you're left alone, surrounded by reflections, but never real connection. So again, ask yourself, have you ever walked away from a conversation and realized you still don't know who they are? Have you ever felt emotionally full, but strangely alone? That's what happens when you're not seen. You're simply echoed. This person doesn't plan to control you. They don't write scripts or play games. They're often kind, gentle, even wounded. But their wounds are the very tool through which they build power. Let me give you an example. You decide to spend a weekend by yourself, to rest, to reset. But just as you mention it, their face drops. "No worries," they say. "I'm just used to being left out." They smile. They say they're fine. But you feel guilty. You cancel your plan. What just happened? They didn't demand. They didn't forbid. But they controlled the outcome by using your own empathy against you. Jung understood that these behaviors don't come from evil. They come from fear. Specifically, the fear of abandonment. And so, unconsciously, they create emotional contracts. If I act small enough, hurt enough, fragile enough, you'll never leave. But the cost of this is enormous. Because over time, you stop acting out of freedom. You start making choices out of obligation, out of fear, out of emotional debt. And that's not love. That's quiet submission. Jung warned that when someone hands you their emotional regulation, they are placing a weight on your shoulders that only they should carry. So ask yourself, do you often feel responsible for how others feel, even when you didn't cause their pain? Do you cancel your joy, your space, your boundaries, because someone might be upset? If so, it's not that you're selfish. It's that your kindness has been weaponized. And no one, not even someone you love, has the right to do that. This one is louder. They seem confident, charismatic, even high-achieving. But underneath that shine is something fragile, a fear of irrelevance. a terror of being less. You'll know them by how they always find a way to outdo you. You had a bad day? They had a worse one. You're struggling with something? They're barely surviving. Even success becomes a battleground. You got promoted? They'll find a flaw in the company. You start working out? They'll mention how they used to run marathons. No matter what you do, you'll always feel behind. At first, it feels like healthy competition. But Jung would tell you, this is not motivation. This is ego warfare. And the weapon? Comparison. The danger here is subtle. You stop sharing. You downplay your progress. You shrink your light, not because you want to, but because you feel like it's safer that way. And that's the real damage. Because the moment you stop celebrating yourself, you start betraying yourself. Jung believed that relationships should be mirrors, not scoreboards. They should reflect your growth, not make you prove it. So ask yourself, have you ever caught yourself minimizing your success to make someone else feel better? Have you ever hidden your wins because someone always made them feel small? If yes, then this isn't friendship. It's silent competition. And if left unaddressed, it will slowly convince you that your only value lies in being less than someone else. They never scream. They never insult. In fact, they often praise you. Just not fully. You say you want to start a business. They smile, tilt their head and say, "Really? That's a lot of risk. I just don't want to see you fail." They label it love. But what you feel is fear. These people aren't bad. They're scared. Scared you'll change. Scared you'll grow. Scared you'll become someone who no longer fits the version of you they're comfortable with. And so they try, gently, politely, to keep you small. Not because they hate you, but because your growth threatens their own comfort. This is one of the hardest dynamics to face. Because the damage isn't loud. It's quiet. It comes in the form of hesitation, doubt, concern disguised as care. Over time, you start internalizing that doubt. You start second-guessing your ambition. You shrink your goals, not because they were impossible, but because someone else couldn't imagine them for themselves. Jung believed these people are mirrors too, just not of your truth. They reflect their fears onto your future. So here's the question. Who in your life makes your dreams feel smaller the moment you speak them out loud? Who says, "I support you," but then follows it with 10 reasons why you shouldn't try? That's not protection. That's projection. And the longer you listen, the more you'll start living someone else's version of safe. This is the person Jung feared the most. Not because they're cruel, but because they pretend not to be capable of cruelty at all. They're the ones who say, "I never get angry. I'm just a good person. I don't have any issues, other people do." And that's the danger. Because when someone denies their own darkness, that darkness doesn't disappear. It leaks into their relationships, into their reactions, into you. You'll notice it when they accuse you of traits you've never shown. You'll feel it when they turn every conflict into your fault. You'll carry shame that isn't yours, because they're dumping their unconscious onto your lap. This is projection at its peak. They don't want to see the shadow in themselves, so they look for it in you. And once they find it, they punish you for it. Jung taught that we all have a shadow, and the more we deny it, the more it owns us. So when someone presents themselves as pure, perfect, or permanently kind, be cautious, because true wholeness doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from integrating the flawed. You don't need to fight these people. You don't need to convince them of their darkness. But you do need to protect your truth from being rewritten by their denial.